This is the Chiefs official podcast network.
Take advantage of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby! Well, welcome back as we're back. The Defending the Kingdom after just a brief time off to have a little parade. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, along with the man we call the Barber Shop, the Spider-Man. Enjoyed Super Bowl 54 and that championship. Once in a lifetime feeling. We're going to try to get this done again, but there's always the first time. And to get that done, what an exhilarating couple of weeks here.
Man, 50 years in the making. After 50 years of not tasting what it tastes to be victorious, being world champions, the entire organization, all the different levels of the staff, all the fans, all the support, assistant coaches, all the friends and families of the players, having a chance to go down there to Miami, and not just celebrate being in the Super Bowl, but actually to come home victorious. And then experience that victory parade when you could come back to your city and celebrate it with all your fan base, man. That was a phenomenal feeling. Like you said, it's a even if we do go back, it's a once in a lifetime feeling to know what it feels like for a city, a fan base, to spend that much time building, and for that thing to all explode in 1 year, and all the glory and everything goes out to Coach Andy Reid and Coach Spags and Tobes and EB and all the assistant coaches. It's just a great feeling to be a part of an organization to see all that hard work really pay off. And
if you want to have some fun, you want to binge on it, just go back to our beginning podcast, take it all the way through. Remember, we could see the summit from here. And if people remember how I ended that game, the Chiefs Kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54. Now, and before we do that, I keep running into people who are loving these podcasts. In St. Louis, we got some fans now, the growing fans. A gal named Jenny Gray Watkins. She's earned her letter jacket with Defending the Kingdom. Got enough quarters to let her. She works out listening to these podcasts. She goes, "Oh, man, I love them, and I work out to them." I'm like, well, okay, I didn't know we were a workout, but, hey, whatever works. But it's, hey, man, you and I in Miami, so many people are coming up to us going, they love it. So we're back and grinding away, so here we go.
Hey, man, from Richmond, Virginia to Tallahassee, Florida to Jacksonville, all the way from North Dakota to South Dakota, the southmost parts of Texas, and all the way out to the West Coast. And, man, they've been showing the Defending the Kingdom podcast so much love. On social media, we get tags for people saying, "Hey, man, love every Friday morning waking up to y'all podcast. You find such a unique way of putting what's in front of the team, what the team has to do to get to the next step, the next level, and then the way we built it each week to culminate with climbing that mountain, man." Everybody I know from my hometown really appreciated it, us letting them see inside the kingdom.
Yep. And now we start with refitting the backpack. For the next 9 weeks, Shop and I are going to look at this Chiefs team, where it's been, where it is, where can it go, because we're getting ready for the climb. But that means we're refitting the backpack down at the bottom of the mountain, getting ready for the 2020 regular season and then 2021 postseason climb. But we're going to go through the next 9 weeks, take you up to the draft. We're going to go through every position group. And we're going to start with this edition with the defensive line. We're going to talk about what they did to get the Chiefs a Super Bowl championship. What does the position look like now? It'll change. The own free agents the Chiefs have in this position, and these are significant in this category. The crockpot guys, I call them the crockpot guys, and I mean it as a compliment. Because if you're in the crockpot, that means you're still here, right? Because if you ain't in the crockpot, they're saying, "Hey, we got a check for you and why don't you take off?" And those are guys that are slow cooking. They are the developmental players that sometimes pop out of the clouds and become big-time players, and fans either don't know about them or they've forgotten about them. And then we're going to talk about some of the premium free agents in the defensive line and some of the draft possibilities. All right. Here we go, Barbershop. What the Chiefs' defensive line was able to do to get a Super Bowl 54 victory, in your opinion?
Man, it starts with training camp, man. It starts with the commitment that once a defensive coordinator walked out or was released, let go, and then Steve Spagnuolo walks in. He hires a whole new staff, a whole new D-line coach, and then you had some guys that are carryover. You had guys that had to decide whether they wanted to buy in or they wanted to continue to be who they be. Having Chris Jones, having a successful season in the 2018 season, looking at 2019, he could have looked at it and said, "Hey man, like I'm good. I'm gonna be who I am. That's good enough. It was good enough for us to get all the way to the AFC Championship game. So I just need everybody else to pick it up." But that's not how Coach Spags builds a defense. He doesn't build a championship defense based off of you rest on your laurels doing what you did a year ago. He starts off with day one. We hear about the great Vince Lombardi saying that this is a football. Every year when he first day of training camp, he told everybody, "This is the first thing I say, opening meeting, day one. This is a football." He wants everybody to understand we're going to start with the fundamentals, the basics, to make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we build it from there every season. And I think he won 4 Super Bowls in a row with that statement. I think that's what Coach Spags brings to the table. He brings to the table a guy who has enough football IQ, enough football philosophy, intelligence that he can start it off the same way. This is a football. This is what we need. It starts in the trenches at the line of scrimmage, and you see our defensive line has been built that way.
What they did since the Mexico City game, that really was when things started to kick in for Spags' defense, the win over the Chargers in Mexico City. 7 quarterback hits in that game, 4 picks. 3 sacks at Tom Brady in New England. Held the Patriots to 4.3 a rush. Week 15 against Denver, 10 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, 3.5 a rush. Then we saw what they did in the playoffs. And even when the game turned in those last 7 minutes of Super Bowl 54, 2 big tip passes by Chris Jones. Pressure, Frank Clark, the blitzes by Spags, the defensive line. Mike Pennell gets a pressure early in the game that led to the Brashad Breeland interception in the first quarter. This was a group that became, well, you could argue, there weren't much better in the NFL the way this group rolled from about mid-November all the way to the Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, you could tell early in the season everybody was feeling each other out. They wanted to make sure, hey, when I hear a certain call, do I fit a certain gap or do I explode through a gap? There was so many different fine-tuning of the techniques, and every level needed to see the guy in front of them, how they were going to react, how they were going to do it so they could go play fast. And once everybody felt comfortable, like you're saying, about halfway through the season, you could see a comfort level where the momentum shifted. It was no longer aiming for the middle of the pack defense that everybody talked about preseason. If the defense somehow, some way ends up 15 to 20th ranked, the offense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. That defense decided, no, we don't work this hard to be mid-pack. We don't work this hard to be middle of the road anything. We're focused on being a championship level defense, a top 5 defense in every category, a defense that can close out games, can win games, can get pressure on quarterbacks and stop the running game, can dictate the flow and the tempo of a game from a defensive standpoint. And you saw that mentality being led by the Honey Badger. But as he led it from a vocal standpoint, I'm telling you, it's the defensive line of scrimmage. It's the way they control that line of scrimmage throughout every ball game that dictated the ending, the final finale, the fourth quarter. All those big plays that you mentioned started with a D lineman having an integral part on disrupting a quarterback or stopping a running game completely in its tracks.
And this defensive front, they held the edge like a champ. They held their gaps, and yet they still got pressure on the quarterback time and time and time again. All of these comebacks, in many ways, were fueled by the defensive line, an exceptional group. So our first quarter here of this podcast, Defending the Kingdom, that is refitting the backpack, getting ready for the climb of 2020/21. Now, here's what the position looks like right now under contract. Frank Clark's under contract, the Shark. We saw him just explode in the playoffs. Damon Harris, Derek Nottie, Tano Passanio, Alex Okafor coming back from injury, and Colin Saunders. In the case, we know what Frank is, right? I want to ask you, though, about Nottie, Passanio, Colin Saunders, and the ability for them to get to the next level.
Passano is a guy, man. He's kind of felt like a rebirth. He felt like he was a guy that was put on the corner in a trash dump, like we was used goods ready for the trash man to pick him up. And then Coach Spagnuolo got here and said, "Hey, man, we're gonna give you the opportunity to make some plays. We can get you the opportunity to get on the field and show us what you can do. Don't. It doesn't matter what everybody said before this time. The beginning of this 2019 season was like he rose like a phoenix from the ashes, and he showed that there's not only a place for him, that he deserves to be in the NFL, and he can play at a high level. So many big plays throughout that playoff run from Passano. He showed he came really far from what we saw of a guy coming out of Villanova, who everybody know looked the part, but didn't know if that was going to transcend to the NFL. And in Sanders, Kalen Sanders he almost was like a YouTube phenomenon, right? A big 300-pound defensive lineman that could do a backflip. That's what he was known for. His versatility, his the way he can move, light on his feet, kind of like a dancing bear. But in the NFL, could he handle a double team? Could he split a double team? Could he make tackles for losses? Will he give ground in order to gain ground in order to make tackles? Did he have the IQ, the football mentality to be effective? And then Nadi. We knew Nadi could bench press a house, a building if needed to, and that he would hold point. But could he have the feet and the mobility to go lateral at the NFL when you have to go against the stretch game? You go against the lateral movements of the running games in the NFL. It takes more than just being able to hold point and being able to bench press a house. You got to be able to go and make plays. And all three of those guys showed an amazing amount of versatility, resilience, and persistence of knowing exactly where they fit on this defense, and then being committed enough to do whatever it takes, whatever it took from them to do personally to get their game level up to a point where we would be effective with them in the game.
All three of those guys had impact in Super Bowl 54. When you go back and watch it for the 43rd time, because I've watched it, I don't know, about 10 times, watch Nadi in the first half,
yes.
Chase to the boundary. He makes a hustle play to the boundary to prevent an even bigger play. At the end, when the Chiefs got the Niners off the field, Nadi made a tackle on a run that could have been about a 30-yard run that became a 5-yard run because Nadi made the tackle. We know what Passano did. Same with Colin Saunders. So, again, on this edition of Defending the Kingdom, it is the first of 9 consecutive weeks. We're going to take a look at every position group here. And right now we're focused on the defensive line as we're refitting the backpack for the 2020 regular season and 21 postseason. It leads us now, as we close in at halftime of this podcast. We all know what we do here. You got 1 second. There it is. Our own free agents in this position. These are guys that are up for free agency. Now, we're going to talk about strategy here on what the Chiefs should do, can do, couldn't do. But we need to address it because on this list is Chris Jones, Emmanuel Ogbah, who was injured, playing really well before he was injured. Mike Pennell. People didn't know who Mike Pennell was in mid-November. And by the Super Bowl, they couldn't wait to throw confetti on his head. He makes a big play on the interception.
Yes, he does.
Rashad Breeland. Xavier Williams, hometown kid, run plugger, and then Terrell Suggs. Yeah. He was the late pickup. Okay, Shop. That's a prominent list of dudes in this position category who are free agents. Man,
that's hard to look at when you talk about them in the totality, and you look at how many of those guys potentially could be lost, and thinking about refilling or trying to replace that void, especially when we're talking about the line of scrimmage. Any other position we talk about on the defensive side, I can envision moving on without a certain person in this, maybe a stop guy, or maybe a guy with a lot of potential. But when we talk about that D-line, the game begins and ends with your defensive line. You got to be able to hold a point. You got to be able to penetrate. You got to be able to have guys that know how to play that game at a high level. And you just named a handful of guys that were intricate in this defense, coming together, molding as a team, and being able to be functional for the second half of the season. And you look at what possibly could be out there to refill those guys. Some of the top guys in free agency, we talked about Chris Jones. We got Clowney from Seattle. You got the guy Barrett from the Bucks, Reeder from the Texans, my man Yanni from the Jags, and then like Dante Fowler from the Rams, Armstead from the 49ers. But the guys that really interest me, it's kind of sparked my interest, is 2 guys from the Steelers, Javon Hargrave and then Bud Dupree.
Yep.
One guy's a monster inside. Loves just the nitty gritty, get your hands dirty. Loves to bloody his knuckles up. He mucks up that game from tackle to tackle. Any interior run, he has to be dealt with in a big way. He's kind of set the point and set the anchor for that Steelers defense. And then Bud Dupree is a guy who's entered the league and has just exploded last year. And both of those guys have kind of been the anchor of the Steelers defense in the way they turned around things about halfway through the season. And you got to look at it. I don't know if the Steelers have a cap situation where they can keep both of those guys and do everything else they need to do. So they'll have to make a decision, maybe re-sign one and let one go. And whichever one they do let go, I think we could definitely find a way to make one of those guys work out here in Kansas City.
Since you're in that category, another guy that's interesting is Dante Fowler of the Rams.
Yes.
He signed a one-year deal, kind of one of those, hey, what do you got left? And 11.5 sacks. We saw his impact a year ago, actually, in a game that's being seen 30 times recently, and that's that Rams-Chiefs game. Some consider the best Monday night game maybe ever. But he's a guy that is intriguing because, let's just be honest, where the Chiefs are in the cap and trying to figure out the cap and looking not only – and again, what I love about the Chiefs and their infrastructure of dealing with the cap is, and with the cap, you got to look at today. I got to look at 6 months. I got to look at a year and 2 years.
Yes.
Every decision I make, if I'm going to pay you or you're going to pay me, I got to look at, hey, we need this guy right now. Well, how does that affect it in 6 months, a year, 2 years? We also know about Patrick Mahomes coming up. So that's that's a common discussion. But a guy like a Dante Fowler, or as you mentioned, because Dupree's a game wrecker.
Yes, he is.
Okay. Now, in the case of when you look at Hargrave and Reeder, a 3-4 guy versus a 4-3, and what Spags wants to do is add a one gap playing over the zero tech over the center. That comes into play here too. But one thing I thought was interesting in watching Spags this year, and you knew it because you played for him, but the versatility guys he likes. I'm going back and thinking of Umanura, the guys he had with the Giants, Pierre-Paul. I don't know if he had him or not, but those guys. And passing, fits that category.
Yes,
I can play inside. I can play outside. I can play on the edge. And to me, if you're looking at free agents, whether it's on our list or not, to me, how much does versatility come into play with Spags in fitting this system?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can look at passing, like you're saying, as a young man's or you say a poor man's JPP, right?
Yeah.
Because he fits that same mold, right? He's long. He's able to use his body. Some of the reasons why Chris Jones is such a accomplished pass rusher and run stopper is because he's long, got long arms. He can fit in the holes. He can read the quarterback's eyes, bat down, key third down, but he's also able to get his body and turk and twist his body the way the Freak used to do for Tennessee, right? The way he used to come off the edge and get his body turned sideways and get pressure on the quarterback. So a young guy with the body of a my man from Villanova, the way he's able to affect the pass game, affect the running game. We got to find some more young guys like that. And the draft is full of them. But there are some other, when you don't talk about the top free agents, there are some young guys. There's some Shaq Lawson, some Kerry Hydes. Vinny Curry was a guy that he's an older guy, but with the Eagles for a little bit. As you go down the list, there are some guys from the 49ers, has a few young guys, Ronald Blair and Anthony Zito. Those guys, everybody is under the same pressure. I think the Chiefs are, is that they have about 20 to 30 guys signed, and then they're going to have to let about 20 guys go. And so that free agency pool is going to get full so quickly. Yep. And everybody who has that checkbook will start opening up that checkbook. And all these high-priced guys, $8 million, $9 million, is going to be going and going and going. And then it's going to leave the residual is some high-quality players that we got to find that just want to go win. High-quality players that have been in the league, they know how to play, they're solid football players. Either they've made enough money already in a short career where they're able to come and take a little bit less, or they're a young budding guy who we can go out and pay a little bit more because we believe that he is an ascending talent and he'll be able to be effective here for the next 3 or 4 years.
It's almost like shopping during the holidays, the Black Friday, remember? Okay, that's like the March 14, 15, 16.
Oh, man.
Everybody rushes and goes. And, we've already mentioned guys like DJ Reader might be right there, and others. But once that rush happens, because we talk about the Chiefs and people are listening to this going, wow, I didn't know all those guys were free agents. Well, every team in this league. That's the intrigue of the National Football League is because of the salary cap, every team in this league has got to be making decisions like this. But to your point, I've seen this every year. The rush to get inside, to get the newest, coolest thing. But then there's the sale.
Yeah.
The sale right after the holidays. And all of a sudden, I go, wait a minute. I just got something that's really more valuable for better value. And it's after that rush that you'll find guys, if they fit your system.
If they fit your system.
And they got to fit this system too, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Because there is a real strong current to this team on defense and really through the whole team. But that's part of the character as well. But that second wave through, basically your after-holiday sale, you can get some really good players that you can win a championship with. Yeah,
the depth is something you're going to build through that free agency and also through the draft. We haven't even acknowledged the draft yet, but we're focusing right now on that free agent period and how many guys. There's going to be a plethora of guys available because, like we're saying, every team's going to have to create some cap room. Everybody's going to be dumping roster spots, free agents. Everybody has to get into this one pool, and then you're going to see teams that have a glaring need to try to create a impact player. To create that impact player, it's going to take a splash. So there's going to be teams overpaying for these 4 or 5 marquee players because their defense needs that. They need this key element that they've never had before. The beautiful thing about this defense is it's built on trust, communication. It's built on every player understanding their role. And I don't know if a guy's skill set outweighs their commitment, their dedication, their heart. And those are things you're not going to find tattooed to the guy's stat sheet. That's when Brett Veach and his staff gets to grinding on that film and realize, man, I love this guy going out of college. I remember sitting down with him and having an interview. The guy's a football guy. He has a high football IQ. He understands fit, feel, and follow through. He understands how to pursue to the ball. Maybe it was an injury that set him back. Maybe it was something off the field that set him back. But you know what? He has a heart to be a Chiefs defensive player and be a part of this defense. And when they find those guys, that right mix of guys, the only thing we ask as the fan base is you give Brett Veach and his staff the trust that they're going to go do what they do. They've always done it. We're not like most teams out there batting like 150. They, twice out of 10 hits they get on base. Our staff, our GM, I mean, we're batting like 500. We've been like 600. Everybody that's coming into this building is seeming to work out. And that's why when they become free agent, it's hard to get them to come back because other teams want them. Other teams want these guys. They kind of mad at their staff that they didn't figure it out before we figured it out, and they got them in the building, and now they're going to overpay for them. And now it's time for us, like we say, retool the bag, find those bargains and find those free agents and those vets that can come in that want to win, want to be a part of a winning franchise, a winning organization, and understands what team football is all about.
Dan Sorensen, that comes to mind. You look at the Neiman kid.
Ben Neiman.
Alex Brown, who they picked up off the street late, who made the big hit in the Houston game to knock the ball out on the kickoff return. We can go right down the line. There's a whole bunch of guys. All right. Into the third quarter, now we go to the fourth quarter of this podcast. Again, our Defending the Kingdom podcast for the next 9 weeks is going to be refitting the backpack. And we are focusing in this podcast on the defensive line. We kind of skimmed over the crockpot guys. And again, as I said at the beginning of the show, this is a compliment. But these are guys, Barbershop, people forget about or don't know about. And I'll just mention names, guys that are on the practice squad. Anthony Lanier was actually signed to a futures contract. Used to play with the Chargers. Devereaux Lawrence. Tim Ward was on the non-football injury list. He's got some wingspan. He's an interesting kid. Braxton Hoyette. Breland Speaks. Mm-hmm. When I say Breland Speaks, people are going to go, oh, yeah, I forgot about Breland Speaks. He tore his knee up. Yeah, we got Breland Speaks. But This team, too, one thing this franchise has done in the 7 years under Andy Reid is the slow cooker guys, the guys who are asked to stay here and develop. Byron Pringle comes to mind. There's many like that, but these crockpot, the importance of finding these guys who are in your system who can develop and become players in this league.
Yeah, and you mentioned Breeden Speaks. That's the guy that jumps off the page as somebody who was drafted, and even when he was drafted, everybody thought that he really wasn't the greatest fit under Bob Sutton's defense. There was a man that, like, he doesn't even fit what they're trying to do defensively. And then you got to start thinking about how far ahead the organization was thinking when they drafted him. How far ahead, and you got to give Brett Veach so much credit for being a visionary and realizing this guy has football talent beyond a defensive coordinator. Whatever coordinator we have, this guy has a body that can fit some position, whether it's a 3-4 defensive end or a 4-3 DT or bumping him out to a 4-3 defensive end. Whatever it takes, he has a body frame that can carry that weight. He has muscle mass. He has that old man cutting wood type strength that you don't find from many city boys. That's that country boy strength we talk about. And Breland, he has that. And it was about him just learning how to be comfortable, learning football, learning the ins and outs. Because they said, hey, when he was at Ole Miss and stuff, maybe didn't have to do many things. It was just go after the quarterback, kind of a B to C gap player. But now with the pros, you're asked to drop a little bit. You're asked to cover the flats. Sometimes you got to take a seam guy. You got to buzz down. You got to be able to move out, kick in and kick out. You got to be able to understand the calls the linebackers are making to you and how that affects your run gap responsibilities. He's had a whole season now of not only just rehabbing since he got put on IR at the end of the training camp, but understanding the flow of the game and understanding that in this defense, we battle to the whistle. We battle all 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. We don't take a snap off. It's a consistent pursuit of quarterback killers coming after that. We hunting like you said. Frank Clark is the shark. It's like that chum is in the water, and they hunt like a pack, and they get after that quarterback as a pack. And understanding how that mentality is not only a on the field on Sunday mentality. It's how you attack training camp. It's how you attack the weight room. It's how they attack the meetings. It's how they attack the opponents on Sunday. It's a mantra. It's an effect. It just keeps rolling. And I think that was he's one of the young kids that I think that he needed to see it from the sideline. We talk about sometimes in a basketball game how that point guard, that sixth man is so valuable because he gets to see everything. He gets to spend 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of the game seeing how everything is going to go, and then he goes into the game as just like a microwave. I think Breland Speaks will be one of those guys who really takes off after having a year of sitting down and watching everybody else go, watching this Super Bowl run, feeling a little bit, maybe a chip on his shoulder that he wasn't able to be a part of it as far as impactful on the field. And that will be something that sparks him this offseason to get himself in shape, mentally and physically prepared to be a part of this defense.
And a full-on dose of Brandon Daly. BD's, the guys calling BD, amazing defensive line coach who had a big-time impact on this team and with this defensive line. And with Speaks, at Ole Miss, they'd gain weight, they'd take weight off him. He's an inside tech. He's a stand-up, 2-point stance guy. I'm just curious what Spags will have planned for him. But, again, a crockpot guy a lot of you have forgotten about. Oh, yeah, we've got that guy on our roster. All right, as we close out this edition of Defending the Kingdom, that is refitting the backpack for the 2020 climb, the draft possibilities. Now, as usual, this is a loaded class, and you've got to look at guys and where they project. But I'm going to throw some out, and some of these guys will be gone by the time the Chiefs draft 32 if they stay there. You could imagine them moving up or down out of that spot. Derek Brown out of Auburn, he'll be long gone. Javon Kinlaw, South Carolina, called a Chris Jones clone. Kinlaw out of South Carolina. Ross Blacklock out of TCU. Raekwon Davis out of Alabama. One local kid that's really interesting to me is Jordan Elliott of Mizzou. That'll be one, and see how he works through this evaluation process. Baylor's got some really good inside tech guys. James Lynch comes to mind. Gross Matos of Penn State. Another guy that's been linked to the Chiefs in some mock drafts at 32 is a kid named Curtis Weaver of Boise State. All right, lots of names thrown out there. You can throw your names out there as well. But what are you looking for if you're going to draft somebody to join this defensive line and say join the party?
I like the way, I mean, you covered pretty much the top 2 rounds of guys. So any of those guys, I think if we're sitting at 32 and we have an opportunity to get one of those guys, and even if a top 20 guy kind of slides down because, the thing about the draft is other teams sometimes have to reach at positions of need. We've just won a Super Bowl. One of the philosophies you've heard from Brett Veach every year, he's been, even before he was a GM, is we stick to the board. We stay tight to our board. You spend so many hours building that board that it's almost disrespectful to break apart from it. And so as there is a guy who you have, in the top 20 who is sliding down and he becomes available at 32, and you got to think there are teams calling in. They want to trade. They want that 32. They want to trade into that spot because they want that 5th-year option and possibly draft another quarterback or something like that. And you have the opportunity to draft to trade down and pick up another pick. I see the Chiefs maybe having the opportunity to trade down, pick up another pick or two, and then being around that 40th pick. And like you said, that kid from Missouri. He has such a great upside, and what you know about this defense is that we already have some solid core players. We have cogs that fit in and do well, and so now we have a guy coming back from the boiler room. All right, the boiler cooker is coming back. So now the guy who comes here from our D-line standpoint, whether he's our first overall pick at 40 or something, or even later than that, 2nd or 3rd round pick, he doesn't have to be a finished product. He has to come in and excel at one thing, whether it's a guy who can come in on 3rd down and is just relentless getting after the pass rusher, getting after the quarterback, or if he's a guy who's just a plug-in field guy who's stud to nuts, screw him in, he can't be moved, a guy who just immovable rock, anchor at the DT position. If he can come in and do one thing and be excellent at it, he'll be able to play a role in this defense until he can round out his game. Because you said, Brandon Daly is a great coach at finding guys that do one thing great, using them, being productive, and then in the offseason having the ability to round them out and extend and do more and let that package grow. We're not worried about if a guy's a one-trick pony. He only can come in as just a speed rusher. If he can do that 100 times and get after quarterback 50 of it and create some pass, some pressure, some hurries, we know what our offense that's something we need. That's something that we're going to be up in a lot of games. The nature of our offense is that when we're up, that the team's going to have to pass, and we need somebody to come in and get after that pass and close it down. So if we draft a guy just for that reason, just to come in and close the game down, to be a bookend against with Frank Clark against the Shark, and be that other bookend, that them two can just have a one-on-one, a 2-on-1 type game system where their object is just to close the game down, get after that quarterback, bring the victory home, then that's a draft pick that's worth making. So I think that everybody is on the board. But like you said, we did it before with Pat Mahomes. We haven't been afraid to package some picks, move up to the top 10, and take an impact player if it's a guy who we feel is going to be a stud on the defensive line for years to come.
But in your description, we have seen guys that can be picked in the 4th, 5th,
definitely,
even the 6th round that fit what you're talking about. The other thing, and as we close this edition of Defending the Kingdom, Refitting the Backpack defensive line, know this, all of you listening, about Brandon Daly. And I think I'm just scanning here, going right down the line. Here's the best compliment I could give Brandon Daly, because I remember watching him all summer and the springtime and summer at training camp going, wow, this group has a chance to really excel. I think every player under his tutelage, every player, everyone got better.
Yes, sir.
In some ways significantly better. And that includes, Shop, Frank Clark.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Frank Clark got better. He was a champ on the edge. Nobody was hunting sacks. Everybody played the run. But Brandon Daly's a stud, and that's a big area of confidence in this position going into 2020.
Yeah, and the way we use our defensive line, the way we have that rotation where we don't just have a starting 4. We have a starting 7, a starting 8, where guys can rotate in, stay fresh, go after the quarterback. We like I said, they hunt as a pack, they hunt as a unit. And so what you saw is Coach Daly take that unit, and instead of just having one superstar in Frank Clark and another superstar at Chris Jones, and then having a melee or 6 or 7 other fringe players, he expected the entire room to play up to that level. That all pro, everybody had to, when you had the opportunity to make a big play, like you said, we saw Pasno, a highlight reel, a career highlight reel in one season. MVP, we saw Pernell make so many big plays to close out games, big hits on the quarterback, created interceptions. We saw my man from Virginia Beach. He was so impactful after the Super Bowl. He just saying, "Hey, Ma, I feel like a champion. I feel like a champion." My man Noddy, being more than he was drafted because he was a strong two-gap, being able just to demand a double team right over the ball. And he became so much more. His versatility and his movement, the way he's been able to control those A gaps and then penetrate and go to the B gaps. But like you said, the one thing the coach has done, everybody in the room grew. Yep. Everybody got better, and that unit became a solid unit. They became, actually, I think, the leader of the defense. That defensive unit led the charge. Every game, if you look at what Honey Badger did on the back end, what Hitchens and Neiman and Ragland did at the linebacker position, I think that everybody would give the credit to what the guys did up front, because those guys were instrumental. They were like a match-hitting lightning. They was like match-hitting fire, throwing gasoline on the flame almost. When it came time for that defense to really uproar and raise up and be something special.
And they were there every week. You didn't have to worry about, I wonder if the D-line's going to show up
every
this
week.
week. They were there every stinking week. He's Shawn Barber, a.k.a. The Shop, a.k.a. Barbershop, a.k.a. Spider-Man. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. We're getting the backpack ready. We're refitting it with the defensive line. And next week, we'll go to the other side of the trenches because we'll go to the offensive line and do this same thing. Thanks for joining us, and here we go, folks. Your defending world champions refitting the backpack on Defending the Kingdom.
Thanks for listening to the Chiefs Official Podcast Network.
10-5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.